Yeah, so I'm really glad and very happy to be here, very honored as well. Thank you very much for the invitation. Yeah, Carmen, I learned from you to have a slide about my personal or professional life. Thank you very much. I will include it next time. So apart from astonishingly being the president or chair of the European Women Lawyers Association, I also have a professional life, because being the president of the European Women Lawyers Association brings a lot of honor but no money. So in my professional life, I am a company owner. I am an owner of a legal boutique. We are specialized, our expertise is in corporate compliance and ethics. Lately, we are really focusing very much on ethical education of companies, employees, and also of board members. I'm having various hats. So I'm also board member of various companies, various enterprises. And I'm also the delegate for Spain to the W20, Women 20, G20. And in March, we discussed heavily AI as the issue for women. Nevertheless, I was not allowed to only focus on women's rights, and that's why I just included women's rights within the fundamental rights. Let's get started. Yeah, so exactly as Carmen also said before, 20 minutes are very short, so it's important to know what we are talking about. And while preparing my presentation for you, at the beginning I had clear in mind that I would talk with you about what is AI, or is AI a danger for fundamental rights, human fundamental rights? And while reading and preparing the presentation, out of the sudden, I started to ask my question, wow, are there a kind of fundamental rights for AI? So what are we talking about? And while getting deeper into this topic, and it has been mentioned before that there are many articles, also scientific articles about AI, and you said it. It's kind of science fiction, but on the other hand, it seems also very doable and real. And that's why I want to invite you, and in fact, all of us, to see my presentation as the starting point of a discussion of how we want our future to be. Because I think we are in a very interesting moment of our life. It's 2019. We are not happy how things have been going lately, especially in UK, but also I'm from Spain with Catalonia. Children's rights, women's rights, we have many wars. So I think this could be a starting point of really reflecting how we want our future to be. Why not? And when doing this, it has been mentioned before, for us it's very difficult to think of AI as not human, but something similar to humans. And I don't know how the video we saw at the beginning that you showed us, how it impacted you. It impacted me quite a lot. I knew this video, the first one, this awakening of Sophia, and impacted me quite a lot. So, as lawyers, it's always good to talk about laws. So we have the UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights. In the preamble, it says, whereas recognition of the inherent dignity and of the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world. That's why my reflection to invite you to think about where does our journey go? Where do we want to live in the future? And in freedom, justice, and peace. And there's also rights as fictions. And being a white woman, I'm quite fortunate, because being a white woman is better than being a black woman, for example, or an Asian woman, or a Roma woman. It's still not as good as being a white man. Why? Because you have the highest social rank. You have been born, and you were able to govern this world without doing anything, only for being born as a white man. So For example, the women's rights movement is rights as fictions. That means that only 100 years ago, I was German-born, now I'm Spanish. 100 years ago, German women were not allowed to vote in Germany. So rights are also influenced by society. Of course, it was mentioned before when talking about robots. It's very easy, or it seems to be easier for us to, we need somehow to be able to connect with something. And I thought it's easier for us to think about robots' rights when thinking about the development of animal rights. At the beginning, I wanted to talk about women's rights here, but I think even for us women, it's easier to think about animal rights and then come back to the question if robots need rights. I don't know if this is a Scottish cow. I was looking for a Scottish cow, but I'm not sure. So, animal rights here in UK, I was focusing on UK. The first date I could find was in 1793. That was when a John Cornish, which I don't know this person, was found not guilty of any crime when he pulled out a horse's tongue. And the court ruled that Cornish could be prosecuted only if there was evidence of malice towards the horse's owner. Only nearly 25, 30 years later, there was a Colonel Richard Martin who proposed a statute to protect horses, and he earned a lot of laughter in Parliament. By the way, on a side remark, women were not in the Parliament, right? You know that better than I do. A year later, in fact, Colonel Richard Martin could laugh about the Parliament because the enactment of the Treatment of Horses and Cattle Act was approved. And it was followed 50 years later, the Cruelty to Animals Act. Then in 1911, we have a Protection of Animals Act. And in 2004, which you might remind very well, you had the Hunting Act, which there followed a survey in 2017 whether you wanted to stop the fox hunting or not. And according to the survey, 85% thought fox hunting should remain prohibited. So this is a short history of pure animal protection within UK. And again, women at the beginning were not integrated in this. India, because I know that you also have a high Indian population within UK, as an interesting side remark, they implemented the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act in 1960. What about human rights? I thought when we talk about human rights, it might be interesting to focus on slavery, because also, again, for us women, it's easier to talk about slavery than about our own rights. So slavery, in the beginning of 1800, slavery was permitted under international law. In 1807, UK abolishes the slave traffic throughout its colonies. In 1815, the Conference of Vienna condemned slavery. In 1857, the US Supreme Court ruled that slavery was legal. And in 1948, coming back again to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, where it states that no one shall be held in slavery or servitude. Slavery and the slave trade shall be prohibited in all their forms. Now, coming back again to the question I raised when I started my presentation, do robots need rights? And I would like to ask you now, what do you think? Do you think robot needs rights? If you can raise your hand if you think they need rights. No one thinks they need rights? Okay, you're not sure? I thought you would raise your hand.
No, on the principle that since robots don't actually exist, what exists are intelligent systems. It's a little bit like saying that Burkhart's washing machine needs a right not to be sued.
Okay.
So that would be my reaction. But, It's a meaningless question where, as I put it, devising the rules of Quidditch.
Or not. Maybe because, yeah.
Well, it all depends on whether the robot exists in its own right or whether it's owned by somebody else. Why do
Yeah.
you think rights if it was owned by another person?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Can a robot enforce his or her rights?
Mm-hmm.
That's the question.
Yeah. Okay, so is this... no? Okay. Okay, so let's continue our journey. I found 4 arguments. 4 arguments that seem to be fulfilled or need to be fulfilled in the opinion of some scientific scientists to say that robot needs, or that if these 4 arguments are fulfilled, then a robot, but we are talking about robots in the sense of Sophia. That means a robot which has human forms, not a robot like the washing machine, of course. So the first argument is that such a robot needs the ability to suffer. You mentioned it before, Carmen. It needs compassion. It needs to bring value to humans. And there could be a combination of humans and AI. I will talk about Elon Musk later. So first, the ability to suffer. Do you think robots have the ability to suffer? Another question. So if you think so, you can raise your hand. You don't think robots have the ability to suffer?
In the movie they had artificial intelligence.
Yeah. Yeah. So nobody thinks that. Okay. Yeah.
They can sense pain.
Sorry?
There's not pain, though it's suffering, so if they feel no pain, how will they suffer?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
the more apt question is, do robots feel at all? Can a robot have an emotion?
Yeah.
Now, one day, can I interject that, it may be that the predictions are correct, and someday we will have strong AI, and strong AI can and maybe end up thinking and behaving like a human, and then we might have self-contained autonomous entities which are capable of feeling and thinking autonomously, and I mean thinking, not mimicking the product of human thought. And then that's a very different question. But the present state of the technology, no.
Yeah, but we are not at the... Sorry?
The analogy with Burkhart's washing machine is actually a perfectly good one. Beware of anthropomorphization.
Thank you very much. However, we are at a starting point and we can influence, we can be proactive change agents. And therefore, let's see, what do the scientists think? Well, they think, and it was mentioned before, that consciousness is a prerequisite for protection based on the ability to suffer. And the definition of consciousness, one of the definitions, is the way things seem to us, which is also called qualia. And I found that Daniel Dennett wrote about qualia. And qualia is described as: first of all, sensing stimuli. Can AI sense stimuli? Has AI senses? You say yes. Why? In which way do you think?
Well, without senses, how does it then obtain its...
Exactly. So, for example, think of, I can't remember, no, I think here in the toilet it's not, but normally now at airports, when you want to wash your hands, you normally have to go like crazy with your hand in order to find this point where it actually catches your hand and knows that you're there, and then the water drops down. So, yeah, we do have sensing stimuli. The second point would be, can AI perceive sensation, the perception? We have the sense. Does it have perception? What does perception mean? Well, perception means, for example, I see here this lovely bag, which is mine, with the logo of my company. And so, yeah, I see a bag, and I think it's a bag. It could also be an illusion, but my perception is it's a bag. So, can AI have the perception of things or of... Yeah, I would also think so, yes. The third point of qualia would be having a sense of self, namely a conception of its own existence in space and time. And this might be the critical point. This would be the what we say in German, the Ich-Gefühl, the I feeling that I exist, which could be, I agree, could be critical. Maybe robots, even Sophia, won't be able to have this I feeling. Mm-hmm. Is there anything, somebody wants to add something? No?
This doesn't seem to me to get anywhere near consciousness.
Okay. However,
I can sense the stimulus.
Yeah.
I can perceive the sensation.
Yeah.
But I, and when I say I mean
yeah.
she, does not know that it's perceiving the sensation.
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting thing not to just consider human consciousness within this. You could equally apply these things, does a tree have this consciousness? And that's something that needs to be considered in there. We can't just consider consciousness from our own limited experience of what that is.
Yeah.
Does AI have the ability to have the same experience as a blade of grass in the way that it moves in the sun?
Yeah.
That's what we need to consider.
Thank you very much. Yeah, very interesting. Any more thoughts on this? Yeah.
I think a lot of the criteria that we apply are necessarily anthropomorphic. So when we're interacting with an animal, a cat, for example, so we would describe it as having a sense of self and a perception of its own existence in time and space. But are we just simply mapping a human experience onto it? I mean, my cat would be livid if she heard me saying that. So.
Yeah. So it's always biased, right?
Yes.
Absolutely, I agree. So the interesting thing, there's an article from 2016, and I highly recommend to read it. The title is An Artificial Robot Nervous System to Teach Robots How to Feel Pain and Reflexively React to Potentially Damaging Contacts. And the authors of this article pretty much say that their robot was able to feel pain, to suffer pain. Yeah, sorry, this is
I can buy it to feel pain, I can't buy it to suffer it.
Okay, it's a scientific article published 2016. Yeah, let's go on. The second point is compassion. Kant, now having been born German, I go back to Kant, and Kant wrote, "Duties to inanimate objects. These allude indirectly to our duties to," and I included women and men. "The human impulse to destroy things that can still be used is very immoral. Thus, all duties relating to animals, other beings, and things have an indirect reference to our duties towards womankind, mankind, in order to have a little bit of inclusive language." So Kant pretty much says, and in all the articles I was reading, I couldn't find that a robot, or there was no scientific article about the compassion of robots, or demonstrating that robots can have compassion. It's more that we human beings have compassion towards the robots, or that we should care better for animals, for machines, and therefore also for robots. And this is what Kant has already been saying many, many years ago.
There's nothing new under the sun.
Exactly, again, yeah, you'd said
because we can actually go back to the Digest and ancient Rome. There's actually an edict, a Praetorian edict, which says that if a man is...
and a woman?
Well, no, because in the Roman context, women didn't own slaves. If a man is actually cruel to his slave, the slave, he's punished and the slave is liberated. But then the rationale is because it is not appropriate for people to abuse their property. And that seems to me to be what you're grasping towards. You see that it might be a societal value that we don't abuse.
Exactly. I'm coming to this. I'm coming to this right now because even Dashevsky, he's a robot ethicist from MIT's Media Lab. He said, and I think that nails what you just have been saying, would you rather live in, say, a Westworld universe filled with humans who feel free to rape and maim the park's mechanical inhabitants, or on the deck of Star Trek, the next generation where advanced robots are treated as equals? And this is the question. Where do we want to live? Where do we see ourselves in the future? Which future do we want? And I really truly think we are able to put the starting point now, and we should really think about this right now. And earlier in the break, we have been discussing about sex robots or sex bots. And yeah, the question is, what do we do with this kind of developments? And we also came to the conclusion in this break that for us, humankind, it's not good to have this kind of wild future, because we want to have a better future. Yeah?
When you develop your thoughts, I would recommend you to read the case number 2. It was of David Slater at AEA. Number 2 at AEA was of David Slater, which is the Federal Circuit Court case in the US.
Yeah.
About the ape trying to get a copy of PETA suing a photographer.
Exactly. This is mentioned in this. Yeah, I know that. Exactly. So yeah, it was exactly. There was a photographer who took a photo of an ape, and then he got sued. And exactly. And I think it took many years. And he said in the end that he was broke because they reached an agreement. Exactly. Yes, a very interesting case. Absolutely. Again, we mentioned it before, the role of physicality of the robots play a big role in this discussion. And there is, again, in the MIT, they did an experiment with a toy mechanical dinosaur, which is called Pleo. And a group of participants, they were asked to play with this toy during 1 hour. And after this hour, they were asked to kill Pleo. And none of the participants was able to kill Pleo. And they got even incentives in order to kill Pleo. And although they got these incentives, none of the participants wanted to kill Pleo. I think in the very end, one killed Pleo, but he or she got punished by the group. So, and then there's also the Uncanny Valley by Masahiro Mori, who says that this is a translation I found, the description of the slow rise, sharp drop, and then relatively fast rise in feelings of familiarity as robots become more like humans. This would be our compassion towards robots. So not the compassion of robots, but our compassion towards robots. The third point would be the value to humanity, which I think has been discussed already this morning, that especially you with your, in the medical sector, I think we can't deny the value to humanity of robots. And then this point is also, I think, very interesting, the combination of humans and AI. And there's Elon Musk who says humans must merge with AI or become irrelevant in the AI age. And shortly after saying this, he presented his new company, Neuralink, which is doing many experiments in this kind of field. So coming back to the questions, fundamental rights, I think now you understand the setting, that it's really important to know or to decide where do we want to live in the future, because it's in our hands as lawyers to influence this future. Carmen mentioned the ethic guidelines for trustworthy AI. This could be one tool. There, I won't talk too much about it. The fundamental rights, some fundamental rights are mentioned. For example, the respect for human dignity. That it's of utmost importance to respect us humans as a subject and not as an object. So that we should never ever in this whole AI discussion forget to focus on the human nature. Freedom of the individual. Maybe most of us here that we are in this room, we like AI and we want AI to prosper and to grow and have a fantastic future. However, there might be many people that don't want AI, they don't want to use AI, they might even don't have a washing machine, and they just want to continue living their lives without AI. So we have to give the freedom to individuals to use AI, to make use of it or not. Respect for democracy, justice, and the rule of law. It was mentioned by you, you didn't enter into it too much, I won't enter into it neither. We know the cases, Cambridge Analytics, Facebook. I attended as a speaker the OECD summit on integrity, where the chair of Transparency International this year talked about the algocracy. So she's saying pretty much that we're not living in a democracy anymore, but in a democracy which is influenced, too much influenced by algorithm. And that's why we live in an algocracy, and we have to do something about it, that we have to wake up. This part, for me, is the most important part: equality, non-discrimination, solidarity. Why? Because it was also mentioned often here, we human beings are biased. We are biased, women and men. And it's very difficult, first of all, to realize our own biases and then to de-bias us. It's even more difficult. And I want to give you an example now that we have a representative from Sweden here. You might know or not, I don't know. A very interesting example. Sweden is a role model, we know that. Maybe they are exaggerating. Do you think they are exaggerating sometimes? I don't know. So a few years ago, they tried to see gender issues within any politics, within any aspect of their community, of Swedish community. And in one city, I think it's Karlskrona, they suddenly focused on snow cleaning. Can you imagine that snow cleaning or cleaning the streets of snow and women, that there's a connection? Snow cleaning and gender? Who thinks that there's a connection? One person, thank you. There is a connection, two, okay, there is a connection. So this community realized that whenever the winter started, that the pavements were full of snow and also the streets. But the machines would first clean the streets and then the pavements. They had many, many accidents. People ended up in hospitals. And when focusing on the people, on the patients that ended up in hospitals, they realized that there were more likely to be women in hospitals than men. And then they focused much more on why that happened. And the case is that women tend much more to take the pavement because they go walking to take their children to school, to the kindergarten, or to whatever, than taking the car. Men are much more likely in this community to take the car. So this community started to switch their policy and started cleaning first the pavements and then later the streets. And that provoked that less people ended up in hospitals. So in fact, it had a positive impact on the GDP of this community. And that's why I think now in the whole of Sweden, you first start to clean the pavements and then later the streets. Why I'm telling you this? Because it's about data. It's about how we gather data. And only because this Swedish community decided to focus on gender aspects in every little aspect in their life, they started about snow shipping in their community. And that's how they started to gather data. What I want to tell you is, sometimes we are so biased that we don't ask the right questions, or we think the question we are asking is not correct. As you just told me before, that I was not asking the right question by asking if a robot needs rights. Maybe you're wrong, and maybe I should ask this question. You see what I mean? So we have to really be critical and step out of our comfort zone and ask questions and try to de-bias us in order to find all data and be as inclusive as possible in order to get this right, because algorithms are created by data, and if we don't get the data right, we don't get good algorithm, which for us women in the future could be a huge problem, which was mentioned before, like for example you talked about the voice recognition of cars, which are more likely to not recognize the women's voices. So this is an issue we really have to work on. And citizen rights, which is also about voting rights. Chris will later tell us about the ethical principles in the context of AI systems. Just to mention what was mentioned in the trustworthy principles, like the principle of respect for human autonomy, the principle of prevention of harm, the principle of fairness, principle of explicability. And there are some red flags which we should keep in mind while talking about fundamental rights and robots. The first one I told you about is the equality issue, the diversity, non-discrimination, and fairness. Identifying and tracking individuals with AI, which is a problem, which is already done. It was also mentioned here before in London, I think, you mentioned before, that in London you had this facial recognition, covered AI systems. Sometimes when I'm talking by the phone, I don't know if I'm talking with a robot or not. This shouldn't be the case. We should always know if we are talking with a robot or with a human being. So this should really be, there should be a solution. And also AI-enabled citizen scoring in violation of fundamental rights. Do you want that everybody knows if you are a violator of fundamental rights and that you have a mark on your skin? I wouldn't want this. Lethal autonomous weapon systems, which I think US has a goal that they in the future want to have their wars with laws. And this is a problem because then it's machines which take the decision where to shoot or whom to shoot. And also, and I think it was also mentioned this morning, potential longer-term concerns, the black swans. There will be things that we are not even able to think about right now, but it will happen, that some issues will arise that we are not even able to think about right now, but we have to be prepared. And I also think, as a lawyer, that we don't need more laws. We don't need to implement more laws. We just need common sense. And remember our history, animal rights, women's rights, human rights, and just use the legislation that we have and common sense. And then I think it should be, we should be prepared to have this future and to have a better future. That's what I wanted to tell you all about. Thank you.